What makes this story so chilling isn't just that 3 men vanished without a trace. It's that everything they left behind suggests they never intended to leave at all. This video contains content that some viewers may find disturbing. Before we explore today's maritime mystery, if you're intrigued by unexplained disappearances and historical enigmas, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe to the channel to join us for more unsolved mysteries 2 to 3 times every week. Now let's begin. December 26, 1900. The steamer Hesperus approached the rocky shores of the Flannan Isles, a small archipelago about 20 miles west of Scotland's Outer Hebrides. The vessel carried relief lighthouse keeper Joseph Moore and supplies for the 3 men stationed at the Flannan Isles Lighthouse. The lighthouse, standing 75 feet tall on the island of Eilean Moor, had only been operational for a year, and this was a routine crew rotation. As the Hesperus drew near, Captain James Harvey noticed something unusual. The lighthouse flag was not flying. No one had come out to greet the approaching vessel. Most concerning of all, the light was not lit, despite the fact that it should have been burning day and night during the dark winter months. Captain Harvey sounded the ship's whistle and fired a flare, but there was no response from the lighthouse. Joseph Moore volunteered to investigate. He was rowed to the small landing area and made the steep climb up to the lighthouse. The main door was locked. When he entered using the spare key, he was met with an eerie silence. The clock had stopped. A chair was overturned. The kitchen table held plates with a half-eaten meal, as if the men had jumped up suddenly in the middle of dinner. The beds were unmade, and the lamps were cleaned and refilled, ready for use. But of the 3 lighthouse keepers, Thomas Marshall, James Duckett, and Donald MacArthur, there was no sign. Moore returned to the Hesperus, visibly shaken. "A dreadful accident has happened at Flannan," he reported. Captain Harvey ordered a thorough search of the small island, but the 3 men were nowhere to be found. They had vanished without a trace. The 3 missing men were not inexperienced novices. Thomas Marshall, the principal keeper, was 28 years old and had been working in lighthouses for several years. James Duckett, the second assistant, was 43 and had 15 years of experience. Donald MacArthur, the occasional keeper, was 40 and, while less experienced than his colleagues, was known to be a hardy Hebridean who had spent his life at sea. Between them, they had approximately 70 years of maritime experience. These are not men who would be easily caught off guard by the sea. The lighthouse itself was in perfect working order. All equipment was properly maintained. The oil reservoirs for the light were full. The brass was polished. The only sign of disturbance was on the west landing platform, where a set of iron railings had been bent and twisted, and a box of ropes and equipment had been scattered as if by a tremendous force. The damage was approximately 110 feet above sea level. When investigators examined the lighthouse log, they found entries that painted a disturbing picture of the days before the disappearance. The final entry was from December 15th, 11 days before the Hesperus arrived. It read simply, "Severe winds the likes of which I have never seen before in 20 years. Earlier entries described how Principal Keeper Marshall had been very quiet, and that Second Assistant Duckett had been crying. The log also noted that occasional Keeper MacArthur, a man known for his strength and temperament, had been praying. These entries suggested that something had deeply unsettled these experienced seamen in the days before they vanished. What could make hardened lighthouse keepers, accustomed to the worst weather the North Atlantic could offer, record such expressions of distress? The official investigation, led by Robert Muirhead, an inspector for the Northern Lighthouse Board who personally knew all 3 men, concluded that the keepers had likely been swept away by a freak wave while attempting to secure equipment during a severe storm. According to this theory, 2 of the men had gone down to the west landing to retrieve or secure equipment, and when they got into trouble, the 3rd keeper rushed to help, leaving the lighthouse unattended, a serious violation of lighthouse protocol. The investigation noted that the weather on December 15th had indeed been severe, with wind speeds reaching hurricane force. Waves in the area could reach over 100 feet during such storms, potentially washing over the landing platform despite its elevation. The damage to the iron railings and scattered equipment seem to support this conclusion. But this explanation, while plausible, fails to account for several troubling details. First and foremost is the question of why all three keepers would have left the lighthouse simultaneously. Lighthouse protocol was extremely strict on this point. One keeper must remain inside the lighthouse at all times, no matter the circumstances. This rule was not merely a suggestion. It was a fundamental principle of lighthouse operation, drilled into every keeper during their training. For all three men to abandon their post would have been an extraordinary breach of duty. Then there's the matter of the oilskin coats. When Moore inspected the lighthouse, he found that the men's waterproof oilskin coats were missing from their pegs by the door. If the men had rushed out suddenly in response to an emergency, why would they have taken the time to put on their heavy weather gear? And if they had gone out prepared for the elements, how could they have been caught so completely off guard? The half-eaten meal on the table suggests a sudden departure, yet the lamps were cleaned and refilled, a time-consuming task that would not have been left completed if there had been a dire emergency requiring immediate attention. And if a massive wave had struck with enough force to sweep away three grown men and damage iron railings 110 feet above sea level, wouldn't there have been more extensive damage to the lighthouse itself? These inconsistencies have led to numerous alternative theories over the years. One suggestion is that one of the keepers murdered the others before taking his own life by jumping into the sea. The isolation of lighthouse duty was known to cause psychological strain, and there had been previous incidents of keepers suffering mental breakdowns. However, there was no evidence of violence inside the lighthouse, and all three men were described by those who knew them as being of sound mind and good character. Another theory proposes that the men were abducted by foreign spies or smugglers who might have been using the remote islands for clandestine operations. The strategic location of the Flannan Isles, with their clear view of shipping lanes, could have made the lighthouse keepers unwitting witnesses to something they were never meant to see. But again, there was no evidence of forced entry or struggle within the lighthouse, and it's difficult to imagine how intruders could have compelled all three men to leave without resistance. Some have suggested more supernatural explanations. The Flannan Isles had long been regarded with superstition by local fishermen, who refused to stay on the islands overnight due to beliefs about spirits or otherworldly presences. In fact, the islands were sometimes called the Other Country, a place where the veil between worlds was thought to be thin. Could the keepers have experienced something beyond rational explanation? A poem by Wilfred Wilson Gibson, published in 1912, captured the public's fascination with the mystery. 3 men alive on Flannan Isle, who thought on 3 men dead. It seemed as if the voices called from the lighthouse tower high, "Come down, come down, come down." In through the open door, 3 men of the Trinity stepped out into the night forevermore. The disappearance of the Flannan Isle Lighthouse keepers quickly entered maritime folklore, joining other famous ghost ship mysteries like the Mary Celeste. The case was particularly unsettling because lighthouses represented safety and reliability in the dangerous world of seafaring. The idea that something could happen to the very men tasked with keeping others safe struck a chord of deep unease in the public consciousness. In the decades since the disappearance, researchers have continued to examine the case, looking for clues that might have been missed. Weather records confirm that there was indeed a severe storm in the area on December 15th, with winds reaching up to 110 miles per hour. Modern understanding of wave dynamics suggests that in certain conditions, a phenomenon known as a rogue wave could potentially have struck the western landing with catastrophic force, even at that elevation. In 2021, a group of mathematicians and oceanographers used computer modeling to simulate the wave patterns around the Flannan Isles during the 1900 storm. Their findings indicated that under the right conditions, waves could have reached heights sufficient to wash over the western landing platform. This lends some credence to the official explanation, though it still doesn't address why all 3 keepers would have violated protocol by venturing out together. Perhaps the most plausible scenario combines elements of the official explanation with human psychology. It's possible that 2 of the keepers did indeed go to secure equipment during a lull in the storm, only to be caught by a sudden, massive wave. The third keeper, hearing their cries for help or witnessing their predicament from the lighthouse, may have made the fatal decision to attempt a rescue, knowing it violated protocol, but unable to stand by while his colleagues were in danger. This would explain the half-eaten meal, abandoned when the third keeper rushed out, the missing oilskins grabbed hastily before heading into the storm, and the cleaned lamps, routine work completed before the emergency occurred. It's a scenario that honors both the physical evidence and the human element of the story. The bonds between men who lived and worked in isolation, dependent on one another for survival. But in the end, the true fate of Thomas Marshall, James Duckett, and Donald MacArthur remains unknown. No bodies were ever recovered. No definitive evidence of their final moments has ever been discovered. The Flannan Isles Lighthouse still stands on Eilean Moor, now automated and unmanned since the 1970s, a silent sentinel over the waters that may hold the answer to its greatest mystery. What happened on that stormy December night in 1900 continues to fascinate and disturb us because it reminds us of how quickly the familiar can become unfathomable. 3 men, experienced and capable, vanished while performing duties they had carried out hundreds of times before. Their disappearance stands as a reminder of the power of the sea, the limits of human knowledge, and the thin line between safety and disaster. In the words of the old lighthouse keeper's prayer, "May the light always shine, and may those who keep it never falter." On Flannan Isle, for reasons we may never understand, that prayer went unanswered.